Hey there, Smart Singers. Welcome to Smart Singing Interviews, where we talk with seasoned professionals and get down to the nitty-gritty. What are those nuggets of wisdom that has taken them years and years and years to learn that they can share with us quickly? Today, I'm going to be interviewing Season 4 American Idol finalist, Anthony Fedorov. You might have also caught him in Rent, playing Roger. Or you might catch his musical that he just wrote, #America. Enough is enough. He's also the world's coolest dad. So, what are we learning about today? Look out for our conversation. Think about the through line. We talk a lot about authenticity, what it means to be an authentic artist, and also about what does it look like to be a lifelong student. If you stay to the end, you're going to get to go through his entire vocal exercise routine, and he's going to explain to us what works for him, and maybe it works for you too. Without further ado, let's go interview Anthony. Welcome to our interview series. I'm very excited about this. I'm going to interview somebody that holds a special place in my heart. It is Anthony Fedorov. Most of your fans know you as top 4 on American Idol. That was season 4, am I right?
Different Life. Yes, that was a while ago.
Different Life. And also, I think you played Roger as well in Rent, under the direction of Michael Greif, which many people would die to have the opportunity to work with. Something maybe people don't know about you, but you're an incredible songwriter and an incredible playwright, and I'm very excited to talk about your upcoming musical #America that you have been working so hard on.
Thank you.
Obviously, those are all very exciting things that you've had happen in your life and your career, and I'm genuinely interested to know, out of all of that, what kind of sticks out to you as your most proud accomplishment in your life? Is there something that sticks out?
Yeah, maybe just a little bit. I think being a dad, I would say, is my most proud accomplishment. And as you know, when you become a parent, a lot of things become very, very clear. And when Julian was born, I realized what my purpose was. And he's the why, he's the reason. And it's a beautiful thing, because when that happens, it sort of provides a very, very a very specific clarity in what you need to do and how you need to do it. So yeah, I would say that being a dad would be my most proudest accomplishment.
And that brings me joy, because I feel a lot of people who are aspiring performers would think that the pinnacle of their life might be the role that they finally accomplished. And it's really refreshing to hear something that is so grounding as becoming a parent.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, again, when I was younger, my sort of career goals and reasons why I did what I was doing were much, much different. So yeah, when I started getting older, and especially becoming a parent,
a lot of people have a very different idea of what success means to them. Obviously, when I was young, success meant one thing. It was very black and white, and I like to say, as I got older, my life became technicolor, and success had more nuance to it. Looking back on your career, and it's been an amazing career, how has your definition of success changed over the years? From the young American Idol hopeful to the very grounded father that you've become. What was that kind of evolution? Like, what did it look like?
That's a very, very good question, because, when you're young and you're sort of, especially being on a show like Idol, and kind of being thrown into that tornado and you just kind of hanging on for your dear life, it obviously provides a lot of wonderful opportunities, and I'll always be grateful to that show, because without that show I wouldn't be anywhere. And of course, going back to those days, what was my definition of success? I want to be a famous recording artist, and I want to sell out stadiums and sell, 1 million albums and all that. And there's nothing wrong with having those goals. I mean, I think it's only natural that people have dreams and they want to accomplish certain things. It's a beautiful thing, but sort of, looking at things now and how my definition of success has evolved, it's sort of, am I spiritually successful? Am I accomplishing the things that I'm accomplishing, doing them the right way, for the right reasons? Am I surrounding myself with people who have my best interests at heart? Am I surrounding myself with people who I want to grow with? Those are the true definitions of success, because it has solidified just as much as it has evolved. Because, of course, I would love to be able to get to a certain point in my career and, kind of have the platform where I can continue to do the things that I'm doing. But I want to get there the right way. That means something to me. That's authentic to my process. And I think if I'm able to do that, then that would be my true definition of success. And everything else that comes as a result of that is sort of icing on the cake, I guess. But getting there the right way with the people that you love for the right reasons is my definition of success.
It's interesting because you're really tapping onto something that I feel like as artists, a lot of us are challenged with, because we're in an industry where people are consistently asking us to bend or to change. Mm-hmm. And so to retain integrity, I feel like is a very well-needed conversation that we need to have in our industry. And how do you feel, has it become a lot easier to make choices and maintain your integrity as an adult? Mm-hmm. Is it something that is more easily spotted now than it was in the past?
I'm at a point in my life where I sort of operate with a certain purpose and kind of center. I've been able to kind of center myself where everything just makes sense. I know, going back to the why and, why I'm doing it. You have to go through the growing pains of bending and sort of, compromising yourself at times where you realize that that's not what you want to do. Art itself at the core is created to uplift the human spirit, right? Mm-hmm. But the business of creating art has its own set of politics and red tape and all that kind of stuff. So in order to get to the true nature of the art, you sort of have to go through the messiness of the business itself. But I do believe, just speaking from my own experiences and sort of moments where I felt like I wasn't speaking my truth, or, I wasn't expressing my authentic voice, I had to go through that to where I finally get to a point in my life where I just say, I'm not doing that anymore. And not that I don't think I really, veered off too much off track. It's just growing pains. It's learning from it and making different choices going forward.
I'm going to actually pivot and ask you, obviously you can sing. But even if you can sing, was there a point in time in your life that you realized, wait, I can actually sing? Like, how old were you when you had the epiphany that I might be talented here? Is there a moment or?
Well, I've sung my whole life. I mean, I used to sing when I was like, 4 or 5. I could stay on pitch. I could hold pitch at a young age. But it wasn't until probably my early teens, late teens, when I realized that I could do this for a living. And it's funny, I actually have Mark Anthony to thank for that, because I used to just sing along to all his albums, like his English albums, his Spanish albums. And it started in a place where it was probably kind of annoying to listen to nonstop, because obviously I couldn't sing like Mark Anthony, like nobody can. But then over a period of a couple of years, because I would just practice nonstop, it's sort of, my voice started to kind of find itself. And I would say early teens, or early to late teens.
Before you ever had any voice lessons, do you notice that there was a way that you would go about practicing?
You know what? It's interesting, because prior to voice lessons, I could never understand why people would come up and say to me, you have a beautiful voice, but you need lessons. You need to study. I'm like, how the hell do you know that? How can you tell? Huh. It wasn't until I had my first vocal lesson where I realized, oh my gosh, I need to study.
What was it that was presented to you in the voice lesson where you had that aha moment?
I studied with Ron Anderson, And literally in the first session that we had, I had that aha moment of like, I could feel my ribcage for the first time. The idea of using your diaphragm completely changed my life. It was like that, what? You know, it was really like, and then all those voices came back in that moment of like, that's how they knew that I needed to study, because I wasn't operating from my diaphragm. Ron made me aware of that diaphragm, and after that first session, I literally felt like I was in a 12-round boxing match, right? Like my ribs were hurting because I used the diaphragm for the first time ever. And I would say that was my aha moment. I was like, okay, you got some work to do.
What was the specific exercise? Can you share with me what it is that literally was, and it's kind of putting you on the spot, but like, what was the exercise that you did and thought, oh my gosh, that is my diaphragm? Was it a siren? Was it like breathing exercise?
It was a breathing exercise, and it was like, he just basically had me like put my hands on my rib cage, and then he basically kind of explained it to me in a way where like, okay, every time you take a breath, I see your shoulders going up. So he's like, you gotta like stop doing that right now and focus specifically on expanding your diaphragm sideways. So I literally just stood there with, you know, my fingers on my rib cage and feeling my ribs expand sideways for the first time. And once I felt that the air actually traveling into my rib cage, as opposed to kind of being stuck in my chest, I was like, whoa, that is crazy. And then the other thing that he made me aware of sort of, you know, he had me put my thumb up here, underneath my chin. He showed me how tense the root of my tongue was, and every time that I would sing, it would always lock up. So for the longest time, what I would do is I would actually practice with having my thumb here, and I'll never forget, he always told me, he's like, it needs to be relaxed to a point where you can just punch a hole through it. You can feel like you can just punch a hole through it. So no matter how loud you're singing, how soft you're singing, this always needs to be relaxed. So that was kind of my measuring stick, where like, okay, am I sending the air in the right area? Am I operating from my diaphragm? One. Number two, is the roof of my tongue, right?
The root. Yeah,
the root.
Okay.
English not so primo.
It's all good. It's good.
The root of my tongue, if that's relaxed or not. And then that sort of, first it was really tense for a while, but then after, you know, just continuous practice, it started to let go, and I was like, oh, okay. And then my tone started to smooth out. I could feel more control and kind of more capacity to hit higher notes and just sustain my sound in a healthy way.
I feel like, you know, singing such an interesting, delicate balance between tension and relaxation. So obviously in letting go of the root of your tongue, you were discovering something else. Did you notice that there was a different place in your body that you started to experience your sound?
Yes, I actually started to feel the sound traveling like through like the middle of my face and out the back of my head. And that's one of the things that Ron continued to kind of drill with me, is that when you raise the roof of your mouth, you know, it's through the process of the yawn, so that you send the sound, and he's like, visualize the sound wave, however you want to visualize it. Could be anything you want. As long as you visualize the sound wave kind of traveling through the middle part of your face and out the back of your head. And I started to kind of feel that I can control my mix more by raising my soft palate. And that was something that was eye-opening to me, because before, my idea of warming up was to basically, okay, so here's some American Idol backstory for y'all. This is something that, you know, this is an exclusive here. Right before the show, each week, and I would even tell the producers, I'll be in my office if you need me, I would go to the bathroom, I would turn on Mark Anthony, and I would blow out my vocal cords, singing what I thought was I was doing, warming up my voice to Mark Anthony songs. I was belting for like 30, 45 minutes prior to going live without ever warming up. So that was my idea of warming up before. But then when I took lessons with Ron, and when I was working with Bird, because Bird also started to introduce the concepts to me of breathing. It all kind of clicked in with Ron, singing through the process of the yawn and sort of putting the sound wave out the back of your head. Like, my mix really solidified. And now I'm singing, I would say like a 70-30, where it's like 70% mix, 30% belt. I can always go into my belt notes. I can like tap into that little goodie bag when I need to, and like give it a little bit more squeeze, give it a little bit more, grit and power. But then for the most part, I'll just stay in my mix because it'll still sound like a belt, but I'm doing it in a healthy way.
I think that that's the biggest misconception for new singers. You hear something loud, you must assume it must be work, it must be painful. So we program ourselves with this idea that a high note belted must be exhausting.
Yeah.
And, the longer you go into the journey of becoming a singer, you realize, oh my gosh, Celine Dion is really only working 10%, even though she sounds like she's at 90% full throttle.
Yeah.
And I can speak for your voice, especially. I mean, like, you are a powerhouse singer. Now, mind you, I think people maybe can go back and watch your American Idol clips and now know that you were blowing your voice out before the show and you were still doing that well, which is incredible.
I mean, I kind of learned...
But not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, and listen, I've learned to let it go. Okay, I'm lying just a little bit. I still cringe when I watch those performances because I wasn't trained. And I was, kind of... Back in those days, looking back, I would say I was kind of like a cover singer, karaoke singer, singing on a national stage. But I didn't really know who I was, artistically and vocally. That took time, and that took studying and really understanding of where my voice needs to sit. So I would say that, to anyone who's starting out, take the time to study, take the time to practice, and doing it right. It's not a race. It's a lifelong thing. There's a lot that I've yet to learn. I'm sure there's a lot more that my voice is capable of. I think it never ends.
I mean, especially, and even now, you're on the other side of the table for a long time. Obviously, you're auditioning, and you're the one up for roles. And now that you've written a musical, here you are auditioning people and being on the other side of the table. Yeah. So is there any insight that you have for vocalists about what you actually see in the audition room when they come in?
It really just comes down to authenticity. Even before you audition someone, you kind of look at their body of work, and it's an energy thing. You feel something or you don't. You either pull towards this person or you're not. And I would just say that it's important to be authentic to who you are. Not trying to fit the mold, not trying to, and that, everything that we're trying to do is, from an artistic standpoint, everything that #America is about is just sort of getting to that truth. Individual truth, collective truth. And so I would say that for us, the experience has been so far that they bring a certain authenticity, a certain piece of themselves that is true, and that you just feel it. You either feel it or you don't. So I would say, just bring yourself to that audition room, no matter what role you're auditioning for. It's not about like kind of fitting into a specific thing. It's like, okay, here's what I have. You're either going to like it or you don't.
That's a very hard thing to accept, I think, because most people in theater are trying their hardest to fit into a mold that has already been pre-cast, ironically. Pre-cast and like cast into a mold, right? So it's like, can I fit into this mold? Yeah. But the trend that I have been seeing is the fact that a lot of people are bringing more authenticity to new roles, and seeing who is being cast in shows that are, a successor to somebody that opened the show on Broadway is actually doing a very different version of it. Yeah. Which is a breath of fresh air for me. Yeah. So it's an interesting thing being a performer, right? We can go to the best voice teachers. I have amazing memories of Ron Anderson. He's an incredible voice teacher. And we can go to the best voice teachers, and they can give us everything possible. But when we step into the room or we step onto the American Idol stage, there's always a curveball. Yes. So what are the curveballs that teachers can't necessarily teach you in the room that you have? It's like the School of Hard Knocks. What have you had to learn on your feet?
That's one of the most important questions that we could go over in this interview. And my answer to your question is, nobody teaches you. Everybody props you up, right? Everybody, like, when you make it to a certain level, everybody's there, jumping on the train, all that. What nobody teaches you is the fall. And that is something that, fortunately and unfortunately, every artist has to learn on their own. I didn't have a false sense of reality, like I've made it already, you know, like I knew that this was only the beginning. We're gonna have a lot of work to do in front of me. But you do, when you get to a certain point, especially on a show like this, where you're like, there's a part of you that, even if it's subconscious, you feel like, okay, that's it. It's never gonna end, you know? But the truth is, it does. Because the next season rolls around, and then the next season rolls around, and then the next season rolls around. Before you know it, 3 years go by, nobody cares. So this is something that, you know, it can be pretty tough psychologically. I've always kind of kept my head down and just kept working, and, you know, transitioned into musical theater, and I just kept going on to the next thing. But nobody teaches you about the fall. It could leave you scarred, and as it has so many, or you can kind of treat it in a way of like, okay, this chapter is over. It's up to me to open the door to the next chapter. I think it's a humbling experience. It teaches you that, hey, you're no better than anybody else. I'd be lying if I would sit here and say that I didn't have a certain expectation after the show, like that I didn't have a certain outlook of like how my career is going to go after the show. So I had to kind of learn that the hard way, and it was a beautiful thing. It really, really was, because now that I'm kind of carving out my own path, that path, the foundation of that path is built on, you know, struggles in life, both personal and career-wise, and also some of the most amazing highs in my career as well as in my personal life. So no one teaches you about the fall. It's only something that you kind of have to go through on your own and, you know, pick yourself up, understand that in this business, nobody owes you anything. You know, I never go into a situation, I don't make a phone call or send an email or send a text message expecting anything in return, or expecting like, oh, I'm going to contact this person and ask them for a favor and they're going to do it for me. No, nobody owes me anything. If you approach this business from this standpoint of just staying humble, leading with gratitude, every opportunity is a gift, then you'll get somewhere. And you'll get somewhere with a certain amount of believing that you are where you are, surrounded by the right people. And it took me, 15 years to figure it out. So I wouldn't have these 15 years going any differently. I really wouldn't.
A lot of us like to value ourselves by how talented we are, or how many people view us as talented.
Yeah.
And then when we have the fall, at the end of the day, all we're left with is what we actually truly think about ourselves, without the applause.
Yep.
And so when you fell, quote unquote fell,
yeah,
how did you fall in love with yourself? I kind of would like to think of it that way. You had to fall in love with yourself all over again. Not the Anthony that was on stage, but the Anthony, the core of Anthony.
I fell in love with the process of growing. People were constantly asking me, like, how did it make you feel that Simon Cowell, he was so mean to you on the show and all of that? And I'm like, I agreed with Simon Cowell like 99% of the time. I knew that I wasn't ready. I was just happy to be there, you know? And it's funny, when right after the finale of I'll never forget this moment, and God willing, I'll see Simon someday and I will tell him about this moment. I went into his dressing room just to kind of thank him for the experience and everything. He sat me down and he started asking me about my goals and what I want to do, and, you know, and we had this really good conversation, and he just basically said, listen, honestly, you're not ready yet. you're nice, you're very likable, and you have a lot of talent, but you're not ready. He's like, you need to crawl under a rock for the next 6 to 7 years. You know, have some life experience, have some, you know, growth. And then when you come back, people are gonna love you because you are likable and you do have a lot of talent. So I really took that to heart, and I kind of fell in love with the process of getting better. So shortly after Idol, I just got into the work. I started taking vocal lessons. I started writing, because I wasn't a songwriter when I was on the show. I didn't write any songs. All of that came right after Idol. And I also think songwriting has helped me also fall in love with my artistic voice, because that's where I discovered myself as an artist. I stopped waiting on somebody else to make something happen, and I was like, okay, I have to take this into my own hands, and sort of, no one's gonna give this to me. I have to like figure this out. I also fell in love, and that kind of opened up a whole other thing that wasn't there before. And I started writing. You know, I lost my brother, and that was also a huge kind of like just opened up the floodgates creatively, because I found songwriting as an escape to cope with the difficulties that I was going through at the time. I fell in love with the process of growing. That's been my anchor throughout this whole time.
And that's why you have my heart. I love you so dearly because of that. And that's why, as you know, I'm so passionate about what I'm doing here with Smart Singing, is really ultimately is getting to the heart of how to find your voice. And it's not just technically how to find your voice and hit the high notes in your mix and be phenomenal. It's to like find your authentic voice inside of yourself, to love yourself, to accept yourself, and to find your footing in the world. And my experience of you has been great, because I've gotten to see the Anthony grow from like the American Idol Anthony into, you know, doing Rent and kind of all of these different lives. And I feel like it's been so lovely to see you grow into the man that you've become. And your authentic voice is, you are standing in your truth in writing the musical that you've written. I don't know if you could have shifted anything on your journey, because I don't know if you would have been here right now because of it.
No, and that's the thing. That's the thing that a lot of artists, I think, if this interview helps in any way, shape, or form, allow yourself to live the life that you're meant to live. Take the falls that you meant to take, and allow yourself to celebrate the wins that you do get, because all of those experiences will ultimately shape you for who you are. And you're absolutely right. It's not about hitting the high notes. It's about what drives those high notes. You know, why do we listen to certain singers who are technically so perfect, but we don't feel anything? And then we listen to other singers who may not be as technically perfect, but when they hit those notes, you feel their experiences in every single imperfection and every single, you know, subtlety. And to me, that's what it's about. It's like, what is driving your art? What is driving who you are? When you get to that moment where who you are as a person and as an artist, when those two things align, that's powerful. That's true. That's authentic.